It was the summer of 1994 when 7-year-old beauty pageant star Lacey Morvan smiled for the cameras one last time. She'd just won her third local title in a row, her charm and confidence lighting up every stage she touched. But days later, everything changed. Lacey vanished from her suburban Colorado home without a single clue left behind. Her family was shattered. No ransom note, no signs of a break-in, and no one claiming to have seen her after sunset. News of her disappearance spread quickly, dominating headlines across the country. The media, police, and even psychics all weighed in, but nothing led anywhere. For years, the case haunted investigators and gripped a nation desperate for answers. Her bedroom was left untouched, her crown still sitting on the shelf, collecting dust. Her mother, Dana, never stopped believing Lacey would come home, but 3 years passed in painful silence. Then, in 1997, during a routine attic cleaning, something strange was found, buried inside a box of old winter clothes, an ordinary plastic cereal bowl. But this wasn't just any dish. It had Lacey's name written in faded marker along the edge. And inside, wedged beneath some yellowing papers, was something no one expected. The attic had supposedly been searched multiple times. So why was this only turning up now? And what exactly was inside that changed everything the investigators thought they knew? What started as a missing child case was about to take a turn no one saw coming. The cereal bowl, though small and seemingly unimportant, immediately caught Dana's attention because she remembered packing it away the week Lacey disappeared. It was her daughter's favorite, the kind with cartoon puppies around the rim. But it wasn't the bowl itself that raised alarms. Tucked beneath it was a crumpled, folded note written in a child's handwriting. At first glance, it looked like a piece of scrap paper. But once unfolded, Dana recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Lacey's. The message was short, shaky, and barely legible. I heard him coming. I hid. Don't tell. Investigators were stunned. For 3 years, they'd combed through every inch of the Morvan house. How had this note escaped them? Had someone planted it? Was it really written before she vanished, or at some later point? Questions piled up quickly, and the house was researched from top to bottom. The attic, in particular, became the focus. This time, officers tore up floorboards and examined insulation. What they found raised even more concern to any scratch. Marks on one of the attic beams and a faded purple bead from the bracelet Lacey wore the day she disappeared. Neighbors were re-questioned, and suspicions started to circle closer to the Morvan home than anyone had expected. Lacey's older cousin, who had stayed with them briefly that summer, became a person of interest. But his alibi, up until then, had always checked out. Still, the attic didn't lie. Something or someone had been hidden up there. And for the first time, the truth felt just within reach. Detectives reopened the case with new urgency, zeroing in on the strange details that had once been dismissed. Lacey's cousin, Jeremy, was 16 at the time of her disappearance. He'd been sent to live with the Morvans for a few weeks that summer while his parents dealt with legal trouble back in Kansas. At the time, Jeremy was quiet, withdrawn, but polite. He told investigators he'd gone out with friends the night. Lacey vanished and returned home late, assuming everyone was already asleep. His story hadn't raised red flags then. But now, with that note and the attic findings, everything was being reevaluated. The note sparked a psychological profile of Lacey's final moments. Experts agreed that the words suggested panic and secrecy. I heard him coming was chilling and vague. Who did she mean? A stranger? Or someone inside the house? And why hide in the attic, a place that was hard to reach for a child her size? Subplots began to emerge. A neighbor remembered hearing footsteps on the Morvan's roof the night Lacey disappeared, but hadn't reported it, thinking it was just raccoons. Another recalled Jeremy asking strange questions about crawl spaces and attic vents just days before. Then there was the family dog Rosie, who barked incessantly that night, a detail Dana now regretted brushing off. The more they pieced things together, the less likely it seemed that Lacey had been taken by an outsider. The fear now was that the truth had been living under their roof all along. Investigators began to look deeper into Jeremy's movements that summer. Old call logs were dug up, and a few local teens who'd known him were tracked down. One former classmate remembered something odd Jeremy had once bragged about, knowing every hiding place in that house, claiming he could disappear for hours without anyone noticing. That didn't mean much back then, but now it took on a darker tone. Meanwhile, forensic teams returned to the attic, this time using advanced tools to scan for signs of disturbance behind the walls and insulation. They found something. Behind one of the beams was a narrow crawl space barely wide enough for a child to fit inside. Inside it, a torn piece of Lacey's pajama top, the same fabric she was last seen wearing. There were also shallow carvings in the wood. Faint initials L.M. scratched again and again into the beam. For Dana, it was unbearable confirmation that her daughter had been up there, maybe for hours. Maybe longer. Jeremy, now in his early 30s, was brought in for questioning. He appeared calm at first, insisting he remembered little from that time. But when shown the note and the fabric, he went quiet. Investigators noticed his hands trembling. Across town, Dana sat in silence as officers worked late into the night. She clutched the note, replaying those last days over and over in her mind. Something had never added up. And now the pieces were beginning to shift into place. The truth felt closer than ever and heavier than she'd imagined. Just when detectives thought they were closing in on the truth, the case took a sharp and unexpected turn. A retired postal worker named Cliff reached out after seeing a news segment about the reopened investigation. He had lived across the street from the Morvins in 1994. And said there was something he'd never been able to forget. One afternoon, a few days after Lacey vanished, he saw a teenage boy dragging a large trash bag across the backyard and into the woods behind the house. He didn't think much of it back then, maybe yard clippings or trash. But now, with Jeremy back in the picture and the attic note-making headlines, that memory hit differently. Detectives returned to the woods behind the Morvin property, a stretch of thick trees leading into an old drainage tunnel system no one had searched thoroughly. Deep in the overgrowth, they uncovered pieces of broken plastica, cracked toy horse Lacey had been photographed holding days before she went missing. It wasn't just discarded junk. It was another breadcrumb. Meanwhile, digital records finally turned up a disturbing detail. In 2003, years after Lacey vanished, Jeremy had been briefly detained in another state after a trespassing incident. He'd been caught trying to access the attic of a family home, where he'd been renting a room. Police there didn't connect it to anything and let him go. But now, patterns were forming. What had seemed like a tragic, isolated disappearance was starting to look like something far more chilling. Jeremy was brought back in for questioning, this time under much heavier scrutiny. When confronted with the new information, Cliff's eyewitness account, the toy horse from the woods, and the prior attic incident, his demeanor finally cracked. He didn't confess outright, but his silence and refusal to explain said enough. Detectives secured a warrant to fully excavate the crawlspace and surrounding foundation near the Morvin home. And that's when the final, haunting discovery was made. Beneath the floorboards, in a long abandoned section of the crawlspace sealed with old insulation and plywood, investigators uncovered a tiny compartment, its walls lined with blankets, children's stickers, and a single flashlight with dead batteries. It was a hiding place, one Lacey had either been led to or found in a moment of terror. And in the corner sat another torn scrap from her pajamas, along with the faded remains of a bracelet. But the most shocking part came after. DNA samples matched a partial print found in the space, not just to Jeremy, but to an unknown female relative. Further digging revealed that Jeremy had a half-sister born secretly after he left Kansas. She'd been adopted out and was never known to the Morvins. She'd recently been seen visiting the area, and even briefly worked as a nanny, just blocks from the original home. It changed the entire theory. Maybe Jeremy wasn't alone. Maybe Lacey's story hadn't ended that night at all. And somewhere, someone else knew exactly what had happened. With the discovery of the crawlspace and the DNA match, investigators shifted their focus to tracking down the mysterious half-sister. Her name was Elise, and she had been living under a different surname for most of her life. After weeks of careful work, authorities located her in a quiet town in Oregon. At first, she denied knowing anything about Lacey Morvan or the case. But after hours of questioning, Elise revealed fragments of memories mentions of a little girl in the dark and old letters Jeremy had sent her when they were teens, describing a secret he could never tell anyone. While Elise wasn't charged with anything, her cooperation helped police confirm that Jeremy had, in fact, acted alone, possibly out of jealousy or fear of being forgotten after Lacey's rise to child stardom. With the case officially closed, Lacey's family finally held a memorial in her honor.